She knows that her father has worked hard for weeks and weeks to earn the money to purchase these shoes. But she also knows that at some point in the not-so-distant future, she's going to be going to school as a girl, wearing boys' shoes, and second-hand boys' shoes at that. Josephine didn't tell me how the other kids reacted to her, but she didn't need to do so. As you might expect, being 107 at the time, her short-term memory wasn't very good, but this was a story that she remembered with crystal clarity, as if it had happened the day before, suggesting that her classmates had made her feel like an outsider because she wasn't as fortunate as they were. After 5 or 6 years of schooling, Josephine left the world of education permanently to get a job to support her family, as was common in those days. She went to work at a knitting mill where she made $5 for 2 weeks of work. $5 for 2 weeks of work. Now, you're probably thinking two things. One, Dominic, that was a long time ago. $5 went further then than it does now. That's true. You're also probably thinking, as would I, that Josephine was young and she couldn't be expected to earn very much money. That's also true, but it still wasn't an awful lot in those days. Over the years, Josephine, her husband, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and her great-great-grandchildren have done everything that you're supposed to do to make it in the United States of America. They've worked hard. They've played by the rules. They've had a strong family. They've contributed to their community while maintaining pride in their Italian heritage, rightful pride in their ancestral heritage. They embraced this country, our unifying national culture, and the English language. And the younger generations, they started businesses and went on to higher education. By the 1960s and 1970s, it was accurate to say that Josephine and her descendants were living their American dreams. In other words, that they were achieving success as they defined it. Josephine's story is in many respects the story of most, but certainly not all, individuals of Italian descent in this country, my ancestors certainly among them, who came here with virtually nothing but their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations. By doing everything you're supposed to do to make it in America, have now achieved success as they define it. The second story that I'd like to share this evening comes to us from New York City. It involves something that all of us have experienced at one time or another: lunchtime at school. In 2004, I sat down with a lady whose name is Louisa. Louisa remembered how her Italian immigrant mother would lovingly prepare lunches for her that drew upon decades, maybe even in some cases centuries, of the family's culinary heritage. Louisa's mother might put egg and pepper sandwiches in her daughter's brown paper lunch bag. She might put zucchini in her daughter's brown paper lunch bag. All kinds of other Italian foods. The same foods, however, that the family enjoyed at home, enjoyed for years and years, in some cases, probably going back to Italy, did not meet with favor from Louisa's non-Italian or American classmates. And we can all understand why. In those days, the smell, the taste, the texture, and the appearance of the contents of Louisa's lunch were unusual for many of our people. Now, very few young people want to stand out around noon, or any other point for that matter. So Louisa had two choices. She could go home to her mother and say Mom or Mother, or more appropriately, what she called her in Italian: "These Italian lunches aren't working for me. I need American food. I need Wonder Bread. I need peanut butter and jelly sandwiches." Louisa's mother, however, had come to our country as an immigrant, as an adult. She might have not understood what her daughter was saying. She might have seen her daughter as being disrespectful, as turning her back on the family, a cardinal sin in Italian culture and any other culture for that matter. So Louisa took matters into her own hands. There'd be days when she'd be walking to school with her brown paper lunch bag, which had grease stains on the bottom from the rich and tasty foods inside. There'd be days in the Bronx when she was walking to school, she'd pass a vacant lot, she'd take her lunch bag, and she would leave it there. In other words, she was willing to go hungry some of the time at noon, rather than experience the feeling of being different from her American classmates. More than 50 years later, the same foods that made Louisa feel embarrassed, and perhaps even ashamed, as we all know, are enjoyed by Americans from virtually every ethnic background, sold in supermarkets throughout our country, and offered on the menus of fancy and fast food restaurants alike. I'm from the Midwest, and on a number of occasions in recent years, as I've been driving around the Chicago metro area, I've seen a billboard for the Italian chicken sandwich at Burger King. The billboard includes a photograph of the sandwich and a caption that reads, "Chicken," with an Italian accent, drawing upon the popularity of so many things Italian today to sell the sandwich. I don't think we would have seen this billboard 50 years ago. It is possible to talk to individuals who remember when in their communities, places with few Americans of Italian descent, pizza was an unusual food. Today, pizza is perhaps one of the best examples that indicates how thoroughly part of the mainstream Italian Americans and the Italian American culture are today. Indeed, it is impossible to disentangle what is Italian and what is Italian American from American culture. If we were to remove those things that are Italian and Italian American from American culture, we wouldn't be able to recognize our culture as it is today. So important are those contributions. And in many cases, if not most cases, most Americans don't even think about them a sign of progress because it's so much thoroughly part of our fabric, of our existence. Today, you would be very hard-pressed to find an American community of at least 10,000 people that does not have at least one Italian pizzeria. In June of 2007, on one of my visits to South Dakota, I was passing through a rural county in the eastern part of the Mount Rushmore state, where 0.9% of the people have some ancestral connection to Italy, according to the federal census of 2000. I went into a convenience store to get a drink. The clerk was at her counter, and next to the counter were slices of pizza for sale. And they were in boxes with the word Italia on those boxes in a place where there are virtually no people of Italian descent. Today, such Italian and Italian American foods as pizza and lasagna are as all-American, or almost as all-American, as hamburgers, hot dogs, and apple pie, illustrating thoroughly and powerfully the acceptance and inclusion today of people of Italian descent in America and Italian American culture. The third story that I'd like to share this evening involves something that all of us have. That would be our names. Years ago, back in 2005, I sat down with a man in Los Angeles. His name, Joseph or Joe Sorrell or Chirell, depending on how you want to pronounce it. When he was born in 1935 in New York City, he was born Joseph Chirella. When he went to enroll in PS 49 in Middle Village West in the Borough of Queens in New York City in 1941, when his father, Salvatore Chirella, took him into the school, he entered as Joseph or Joe Chirella, and he left it the same day as Joseph or Joe Chirell or Sorrell. What happened was Salvatore Chirella was a firefighter, and in his given profession, he encountered some flack from some of the other firefighters who weren't of Italian descent. We were also on the eve of the Second World War, and for a time, Italy was our enemy. So for these two reasons, Salvatore Chirella made a decision when he went to enroll his son for his first grade education. He decided to take the A off of the family name for his little boy, not because he was ashamed of his Italian